I want to invite you on a dinner over the holidays with my family, my extended family. We're sitting around the table and we're having a nice time, as holiday dinners can be, when somewhere in between the second and third course, you hear my uncle say something clearly racist. The room gets quiet and awkward. By the way, I realize this is totally unrelatable because we all have perfectly behaved relatives in this room. In that quietness, my brother opens his mouth as if to say something, and then he just sighs, probably thinking our uncle's never going to change. And we move on. That's what families do, right? We move on. Except I don't. I hold it with me, and I carry it for days into a coffee with my friend I while sitting at university, where our lab researches bias, emotions, and empathy with a team of neuroscientists. And so I'm speaking with I, who's my friend. She's black, queer, first-generation, low-income student, brilliant woman. And I'm telling her about my holiday, and she says to me, Micah, story of my life. Every single moment of every day, it feels like I'm speaking up, trying to make a stand, trying to make a point, and people laugh at me. People think that I'm the one in the wrong. And that really got to me. So now I'm doubly annoyed. I'm doubly frustrated. And I just carry it with me for days and days and days, and it just bubbles up and boils up until a week later, I was in a meeting with a corporate client, and someone said something offensive in that meeting, and it just blurted out at me. I said, hey, listen, sorry, I found that offensive and it really bothered me. And the next thing that happened is someone else in that meeting said, hey, that bothered me too, and we ended up getting into a conversation that not only included the person that said the offensive remark and he felt better, but actually we all felt better, and we felt more whole. And I thought about how in the first meeting, over my holiday, nobody spoke and we all felt awful. When my friend I speaks up, she feels awful, and also she's disheartened about the world around her. But in this meeting where multiple people spoke up, we all felt better. How was that? Because it almost didn't happen that way. In my lifetime of work creating immersive experiences towards the benefit of human flourishing, leveraging scientific knowledge, there's something that I hold as a bit of a truism after working with governments, people, and organizations, and that is that most of us want to get along, and most of us want to create change. But there's something magical about many people wanting this at once. And so I want to talk to you about the experiences I've shared with you thus far and how it aligns with our research. And in order to do that, let's talk about what the foundation is of teams. Now, when I say teams, people often think about sports teams, and those are teams, yes, but teams are actually everywhere. We live in a world of teams. Teams are our families, they're our friend groups, they're our classrooms, and they're absolutely our organizations. We live in a world of teams. In 2016, Google did a massive study to try and understand what makes teams great. And they looked at everything you could possibly look at when you're thinking about what makes a team great. Was it people with similar educational backgrounds? Was it combining the best people? Was it people with similar interests? Was it that old tune of introverts versus extroverts? Maybe it was levels of reward. And what they found out is that none of that seemed to matter. None of that actually made a team great. But instead, it was a series of rituals that a team would have, unspoken agreements, what we might call a vibe, and what we in social science call group norms. And teams with really good group norms would perform well across tasks, and teams with poor norms, regardless of education or salary, would perform poorly across tasks. So what do you think it was that made a team with good group norms so good? Well, the answer across the board was very simple. It was feeling safe, psychological safety, which means the ability to ask a question and feel like you're not going to be thought that you're dumb for asking it. And it leads to the dependability that we're looking for. It leads to a sense of structure, right, that we can trust each other and make a plan and get it done. And it leads to the intrinsic motivation that work matters to us, and we know that from each other. Ultimately, it leads to the impact that we're all doing something to make a difference. And that impact is important because that impact aligns us with the goals of our universities and our organizations and that return on investment. It aligns us all. But here's the thing. We do not believe that you can have a psychologically safe team that does not feel inclusive. I want you to put yourself back in that meeting room, the one we were just in. And this time, put yourself there. And imagine that we're in a meeting and it's flowing beautifully, right? We're having a good conversation, there's 10 minutes left, and all of a sudden someone says something unintentionally sexist. Then someone else speaks up and says, hey, so sorry to interrupt. I know we're almost done with this meeting, but I found what you said just now sexist. What do you think happens in most meeting rooms across the country next? Well, the answer is crickets chirping. Nothing happens, right? Or maybe someone tries to manage away the conversation, saying there's only a few minutes left, so, can we talk about this maybe another time, and then it doesn't get talked about. These are the reactions, and these are the teams where people start to pull back and feel invisible. These are the teams where people start to check out and pull away. And over the course of time, people start to disappear entirely. They leave. And those who remain behind sit there asking themselves, what happened? Because these are not the things that are reported to HR, and they're not in our exit reports either. But this is how teams fall apart. You can simply not have a psychologically safe team that doesn't feel inclusive. When one person in the room speaks up and says something, frankly, they are seen as a token troublemaker. The person who always is causing trouble for all of us, which is ironic because they're trying to help, right? When that second person becomes a conversation partner, things really start to change. We can see that by something called the Overton window. For the nerds of you out there, you can look this up, right? The Overton window is the idea that the unthinkable opinions on the outside are not the ones that get voted into office, they're not the ones that get heard, it's the viewpoints in the middle that get heard. And by the viewpoints in the middle joining the things that are innovative, that's how we shift environmental bias, right? That's how we shift the environment to make the change that we're looking for. So, going back to our research and our work on the science of empathy and our work with hundreds of DEI strategists, I want to tell you about a key that we have discovered. It's not our key, though. It's all of our keys. It's a golden key that you can hold in your hand, you can keep it in your pocket. And whenever you're in a situation where you feel like there's someone who's not speaking up and you really want to, here's what you can apply. All you have to do to use this key is remember this phrase. The phrase is two in the room. Specifically, two people in every room who are comfortable and willing to speak up for the rights of others. Two in the room. Two people in every room who are immersed in each other's perspectives enough to get them to be motivated to speak up. Two people in the room can open the door to the conversations that need partners, to the perspectives that need followers, and ultimately to the ideas that need to be discussed in order to shift our environments. Two in the room. So how do we get it? How do we get two in the room? And who is that second person? In the last few years, our team has shared an immersive experience with 10,000 people at over 100 organizations where you can walk in the shoes of someone else as well as you possibly can. You can see their perspective. And we've talked to chief diversity officers at schools, universities, and what we've found is that by and large, we are not focused on creating that second person. We're currently not focused on that. So what are we focused on, right? Where are we today? Well, despite what popular media would like us to believe, we are not a country of racists and non-racist, sexist and non-sexist, right? We are not a binary of viewpoints. Actually, we're on a spectrum of bias. And that spectrum is really more like a bell curve, right? On the outsides, yes, we have the outspoken advocates, and we have the explicitly biased people who are trying to justify it. But by and large, we're in the middle. Most of us are well-meaning empaths who want us all to get along, even if we don't understand how, right? Some of us are quite biased, and we have no clue, right? And some of us are almost allies, people who are really motivated to speak up, but we're missing the tools to know how to do so. To keep it simple, let's not think about the bell curve, though. Let's just put it on an even spectrum and imagine that there's one person from every category in a room together. And you can pick out which one you are, and you can imagine you're in a room with 4 other people. What we do at our schools and our organizations, even in our families, most of the time, is we focus on this person, and that's how we try and change our environments, right? The explicitly biased person who's trying to justify it. That's what we focus on. Why do we do that? It's because they drive us crazy. They piss us off, right? They keep us awake at night wondering, why are we working with them? They make us leave their jobs, and they are the reports to HR. So it's very, very emotionally understandable that we put a lot of energy on this person. I've had hundreds of DEI directors ask me, what do we do about this person? But the problem is, science feels that it's just the opposite that we should be doing. We should not be focusing on this person. This is the least efficient person to focus on. And the answer, the reason why, is because bias, as we know, is historical, right? If you've grown up in a history of bias, it's very hard to change that history. But bias is also environmental. You can almost think of bias like a wave in a stadium. If you're in the 80th row of a football stadium and everyone stands up to do the wave and it's coming towards you, it's really hard for scientists to tell you if you're going to stand up too based on your personality or how much sleep you got the night before, right? But it's very easy for scientists to tell you if you're going to stand up based on the amount of people standing up around you. And that's because we don't make decisions in a vacuum. So if you have grown up in a homogeneous environment where other people are biased, it is very hard to change your opinion. And that goes for all of us. And that's why that person is very, very hard to change. If we want the outspoken advocate to feel seen and heard and understood and supported, it is the almost ally speaking up, being that conversation partner, and they become the new advocate. And guess what? When that happens, then the well-meaning empath in the middle of the spectrum becomes the almost ally. And you can guess where this is going, right? The quite biased and unaware person becomes the more aware person. And even the explicitly biased person who's trying to justify it becomes less sure of their viewpoints. Again, how do we create radical change without changing radicals? The truth is we do change the radical, just not first. This is how we shift the environment in a way that works. So this is not the question we need to be asking, how do we fix this person? The question we need to ask ourselves is, how do we activate the almost ally? And I imagine that many of you in this room, and anyone who's hearing this who is still listening, might be one of those almost allies. In our nation's strategy of diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, belonging, and empathy, we are giving people key takeaways and calling it a key. These key takeaways are facts, statistics, and exercises. But the problem with facts and statistics is they do not change behavior. They are great for passing the LSATs or the MCATs or cramming for an exam, right? But they don't change behavior. If we want to change behavior, we need to remember that it is that friend in high school, it's that roommate in college, it's someone who's very different from you that you have a meaningful amount of time with that makes you open-minded to hear what they have to say and what people like them have to say, right? Exposure to difference creates empathy. And empathy is actually the cure to the isms, and all scientists, by and large, agree with this. We don't agree on a lot of things, but we agree on this. We don't talk about the isms in a curative way, right? In this country, in this world, but I think we need to start doing so. Because how can we cure racism, sexism, and genderism if we don't think that there is a cure? But in order for empathy to work, I think we need to define it differently because it's defined wrong in the dictionary. Empathy is not the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. We'll never truly be able to walk in someone else's shoes, and we'll never understand what someone else truly feels. We barely understand what we feel, right? But what if empathy instead is defined as the ability to celebrate the validity of another's experience, to celebrate it as valid as our own? If we can immerse ourselves in a plurality of different experiences and let them become as valid as our own, as almost allies, what do you think can happen? This is the question we need to be asking ourselves. In 2006, Sir Ken Robinson stood on a TED stage just like this one, and he said that we have to rethink the fundamental principles on which we're educating our children. He also said, we may not see this future, but they will. and it is our job to make something of it. Well, 15 years later, we are those children, or those young adults, right? We're here right now. And now it's our job to make something of it, to make something of that idea. So I don't want to delay that at all. I want to do it right now. I want to immerse you into someone else's experience right now. If you remember my friend I from the beginning, black, queer, first generation, college student, low-income background, brilliant woman, I'd like to immerse you into her experience. And in order to be immersed into I's experience, you're going to see the world through her eyes. And when her words come up on the screen, I'd like us all to read those words out loud, together. And the good news is, if we all read them together out loud at the same time, it'll be equally awkward for all of us. All right, let's go for it.
Oh yeah, he's really cute.
Really?
Yeah, I used to think about dating him, but then he started calling himself bi.
Would you ever date a bisexual guy?
He's just gay, so no.
Doesn't he call himself bisexual?
Yeah, but come on, he's just in the closet.
If he says he's bi, he's bi.
Not really the vibe I'm getting.
I have a class in 3 hours. Where are we going for dinner?
What about Thai food? We haven't done that in a little while.
Sounds good.
Cool.
I kind of feel they is difficult to do because it's a plural.
They has been used singularly for centuries, plus language is made up
Well,
and changes all the time.
It's just improper grammar to me.
I mean, I've known her since high school, and what, I'm supposed to call her him now?
Well, those are pronouns.
And I'm supposed to feel bad if I call her her? I mean, that puts a lot of pressure on me. I don't know, it's just a lot to expect.
This is what it feels like to be one in the room. And now that you know that feeling, you've changed. And so have 10,000 other people before you doing this. We learn through plurality of experience and our emotional connection to experience. Let's not forget that once upon a time, not so long ago, gay marriage was considered unacceptable by most of this country. Until we all realized that we have a gay friend or a gay relative, and almost overnight it changed. This is possible. 2 in the room is possible to create the radical change that we're looking for. So to close the circle today, I'd like to go back to that holiday dinner, but this time, I want you to invite me to yours. And as we're sitting at your holiday dinner with your extended family, brothers and sisters-in-laws, grandparents, aunts, uncles, I want you to look around the table, and I want you to identify the person in the room who drives you the most crazy. The one who you have time and time again said, it doesn't matter what I do because they're not going to change. They're always going to be this way. And realize that there are millions of people out there who have said the exact same thing, and I have heard some of them say it as well. Take that feeling of stress, hold on to it very tightly and focus on it for a second, because it's disheartening. And now what I want you to do is I want you what I'd like you to do instead is just take a deep breath and let it go. Let it go. And instead, just keep looking around the table, and remember that you invited me to your table, and I'm sitting there. And at the moment that something happens that you want to say something about, look over to me, because I'm giving you this knowing glance. And this knowing glance is saying that if you're going to say something, I'm going to say something as well. I will be that second person. And if I say something, I know you're going to be that second person in the room. Because this is how we shift environmental bias together. This is how we get what we want, right? This is how we create radical change without changing the radical. This is 2 in the room. Thank you very, very much.